The highway stretched endlessly into the dark abyss of the night, a single ribbon of asphalt cutting through an ocean of trees. Clara's gas tank blinked a menacing red, and her GPS had gone silent hours ago. Just as panic began to rise in her chest, a flickering neon sign appeared in the distance. The Last Motel, vacancy. Clara pulled into the gravel lot, the sound of her tires crunching beneath her barely audible over the eerie hum of cicadas. The motel looked ancient, its paint peeling and its windows dark, but it was her only option. The arrival, Clara stepped into the lobby, the scent of old wood and mildew enveloping her. A tarnished bell rested on the counter. She hesitated before tapping it lightly, the sound sharp and jarring in the stillness. From the back room, a middle-aged man with a crooked smile emerged. His name tag read Earl, though the letters seemed scratched as if tampered with. "Late night, huh?" he said, his voice gravelly. Clara nodded. "Ran out of options. I'll just need a room for the night." Earl's smile widened unnaturally as he handed her an old-fashioned key. "Room 7. Comfortable enough. Just one thing. Don't open your window after midnight. The bugs are bad out here." The way he said it made Clara's skin crawl, but she forced a polite smile and took the key. "Thanks for the heads up." The room 7, smelled faintly of mildew, and the wallpaper curled at the edges. Clara's suitcase thudded onto the floor as she surveyed her surroundings. The bedspread was a faded floral pattern, the kind you'd see in a thrift store. A single lamp illuminated the room, casting long, menacing shadows on the walls. The window caught her attention. Heavy, dusty curtains covered it completely, and the glass beneath appeared foggy. Earl's warning echoed in her mind, but she shrugged it off. Bugs, she thought. She dealt with worse. Fatigue began to settle in, but as Clara lay on the bed, she couldn't shake the unease. The mattress felt lumpy, and the silence outside was unnerving. At exactly 12:03 a.m., a faint tapping at the window broke the stillness. Clara's breath hitched. Her rational mind whispered that it was just the wind or perhaps a branch brushing against the glass. But then it came again, deliberate, rhythmic tapping. "Bugs," she muttered to herself, though the word sounded hollow. She tried to ignore it, pulling the blanket over her head, but the tapping grew louder. Then came the whispering, faint, like voices carried on the wind, but unmistakable. The stranger. Unable to ignore it any longer, Clara slid out of bed and tiptoed to the window. Her fingers trembled as she pulled back a corner of the curtain to peek outside. The glass was foggy, but she could make out a figure standing just beyond the window. Her heart froze. The figure was motionless, but their hand rested against the glass, tapping rhythmically. Their face was obscured by shadows, and the dim glow of the motel sign barely illuminated their outline. Clara stumbled back, her pulse racing. She grabbed her phone, only to see no service glaring back at her. Desperation drove her to the room's landline, but when she picked up the receiver, the line was dead. She glanced back at the window. The figure was gone. The escape attempt, fighting the rising panic, Clara decided to leave. She shoved her belongings into her suitcase and bolted for the door. The gravel crunched under her feet as she sprinted to her car. But when she reached the spot where she'd parked, her car was gone. No, she whispered, spinning in circles as if the vehicle might reappear. The lot was empty, and the surrounding trees loomed like silent sentinels. The motel looked different now. The peeling paint seemed fresh, the windows brighter, but the eerie silence remained. Clara hurried back to the lobby, hoping to find Earl. The bell jingled as she pushed the door open, but the desk was empty. The room felt colder than before. A framed photograph on the wall caught her eye. It was black and white, depicting a group of people standing in front of the motel. Earl stood among them, younger but unmistakable. Beneath the photo, a small plaque read, "Grand Opening, 1952. The discovery. Clara's breathing quickened as she scanned the photo. The faces of the other people seemed blurred, their features indistinct. Earl's warning replayed in her mind. The tapping, the whispering. Something was terribly wrong. She rushed back to room 7, desperate to barricade herself. But when she opened the door, she froze. Her suitcase was gone, and the room looked untouched, as though no one had ever stayed there. Her reflection in the mirror startled her. She looked pale, almost translucent. Her lips moved, but the sound she heard wasn't hers. It was the whispers again, louder now, circling her like a predator. Clara backed into the corner, clutching her head as the whispers grew deafening. The tapping returned, this time accompanied by a faint laugh. She screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive air. The final hours. The clock on the bedside table read 3 a.m. when Clara finally found the courage to move. She grabbed a chair and wedged it under the doorknob. The whispers had stopped, but an unnatural silence took their place. The window, now uncovered, revealed a grotesque sight. Figures stood in the parking lot, their faces featureless, their bodies swaying as if caught in an invisible breeze. They pointed toward room 7 in unison. Clara's breath came in shallow gasps. She clutched her phone, her fingers trembling as she attempted to record what she saw. But when she played the footage back, the parking lot appeared empty. Her own reflection stared back at her from the screen, her face pale and drawn. The twist. As dawn approached, the figures disappeared and the whispers faded. Clara's body felt heavy, her movements sluggish. When she finally opened the door, the motel was gone. In its place was a barren field, overgrown with weeds. Her car sat in the middle of it, untouched but covered in a thick layer of dust. The sun rose higher, casting eerie shadows across the landscape. Clara stumbled toward her car, hoping to find refuge. But when she opened the door, her reflection stared back at her from the rearview mirror, pale, hollow, and unrecognizable. A whisper escaped her own lips, unbidden. "You should have stayed inside." Weeks later, a highway patrol officer stumbled upon the Last Motel, its structure dilapidated and abandoned. Inside room 7, he found an old recording device. When he played it, a single voice echoed through the room, Clara's, whispering, "Don't open the window. They're still here."